Hello, everyone. I'm Billie Mae,
I'm Debbie Kitchen.
and we are geriatric care managers, as Terry said, with Aging Life Care Solutions. And a lot of what we do in our practice is to facilitate conversations with families. And so we're going to talk today about how to start a productive conversation on difficult subjects and kind of what you need to focus on, how to prioritize. And then at the end, if you have questions, go ahead and type them in and we'll try to answer your questions at the end. So although it can become too late to have the conversations quite suddenly, it is never too soon to talk to your parent. And we're going to kind of, just for simplicity's sake, refer to talking with your parents, but it may be talking with another family member, a friend, a child. So it's not always parents, even though we're going to refer them to parents. But to talk to your parents and siblings about medical care, housing, etc. Obviously, if your family member is very frail or ill, or you're in a crisis situation, talks are urgent. But it's never too soon to start having these conversations. And no one really wants to have the conversation. No one wants to imagine, much less discuss, a time when your parent may need to go to a nursing home or talk about end-of-life decisions. It can be awkward and difficult to bring up, particularly if maybe you don't have a relationship where you have discussed things in the past. Or if you're helping take care of your parents and you're in the thick of taking them to the doctor or bringing them food. So how are you supposed to plan for the future? Or perhaps you think the planning's all been done. You think everything's in place, only to discover that it hasn't been.
And so many times with the clients that we have, they are calling us when a crisis is happening, and it is very difficult to make those decisions, because you've got to do it rapidly, and it's very frustrating and very stressful for both the parent and the child. So that's why we want to just look at some, it's just never too soon to talk. And that's why you want to look at what are their needs, what are their goals, looking at their daily activities, bathing, etc. And we'll go into this more in depth. What about housing, where they are now, where they, may need to move at a higher level of care? How about their medical care? And then, as we had said, end of life decisions. Not that you're going to have to talk about all of these at once, but if you could kind of start thinking and setting priorities on what topics do I really, really need to talk about. If you've got more family members, hey, Mary Joan might be better talking about this situation versus another situation. So again, start thinking about that.
So just a couple of things. Benefits. We all know the benefits, but planning ahead ensures that the person has a say in his or her future. So of course, if the person cognitively is able, you always want to let them have a say, because it is their life. Right. As Debbie said, it's much easier to have the discussion when there's no dire problem or a crisis at hand. And then in a crisis situation, you don't have the luxury of putting it off. So you need to go ahead and have the conversation.
And for an example of that is, and we see this all the time, it's a kind of a crisis when it's like mom or dad should not be driving anymore, and you've got to do that decision right now. You can't really wait because it's not safe at the time. So that's just one example of kind of in a crisis with dad out driving, and he should not be.
So breaking the silence, how to get started. How to start the conversation is going to depend on the situation and your relationship with your parents or loved ones. if you're caring for a parent that's already very frail or has serious illnesses, you may just have to tackle it head on and say, Mom, given your health and what the doctor just told us, I think we need to talk about some things. If it's not pressing and you'd rather use a less direct approach, one way is to ask for advice. So you might say, Dad, Fred and I are thinking about our retirement and wanting to do some planning. I was just wondering, how did you plan for your retirement? Do you worry about the cost of long-term care? Do you feel like you've saved enough? That sort of thing. Because parents usually love to give advice to their children. And so that can be a good way to kind of break the ice.
Yeah, and then asking just general question, just looking at your life, what have you been happy with? What would you change differently, just to kind of guide us along so that we know, how we should do things. If you could just give us some advice on that, on what you've been happy with, on what you would change if you could. And then you could also, another thing is discuss someone else's situation. Mom and Dad, your friends, the Smiths, he started, kind of going downhill, and she was the caregiver. What did they do in that situation? Do you have any ideas on what may have helped them a little bit more? So again, bringing it up in that situation.
And you can also use, say, a magazine article or a television show you've seen and say, Mom, I saw this very interesting article was talking about aging in place and talking about all the new technologies and things that are available. And what do you think about it? And discuss what's available with them. What we have found is very often people think the option is to stay at home or to move to a nursing home. And people don't realize that there are many options in between.
Right.
Moving to a nursing home is kind of last resort, but there's a lot of ways to help people either age in their own home, or maybe if they need a higher level of care, to move to assisted living or have people come into the home or something that's not just straight to the nursing home.
I mean, there's all kinds of various, to stay in the home safely. Oh, I didn't know I could do that. As far as you could put this into place or that into place. And of course, what we see is we'll coordinate these changes for safety. And then as time moves on, we have to tweak the plan a lot, but at least establishing that relationship, and then looking at, here are a lot of options before you have to go to a nursing home, if at all.
So when to talk. This is just kind of some general principles. You want to pick a time when you and your parents are calm and rested, when you won't be interrupted, when you're not in a crisis situation, if you can.
And you definitely don't want to come in and give a quick solution. Hey, Mom, Dad, I think y'all need to move to an assisted living. We've looked at this place and all that. That would definitely stop that conversation at that time.
You want to be real open about the facts. You might say, Mom, at our last doctor visit, the doctor said, you have your heart failure is progressing, and that your energy levels are going down. I've noticed that. You want to be very gentle, but you don't want to lie or hide the information. You might bring up some financial issues that I'm not sure how much longer you can afford to stay here, or, whatever the facts are, just don't try to hide it, but be very gentle. And then be aware if your parent is overwhelmed or becoming tired. Like Debbie said earlier, you don't want to plan to talk about everything at once, but just sometimes you may be only able to talk for 5 or 10 minutes, and then your parent says, oh, I just can't talk about this right now.
Yeah, and then as you leave the conversation, you know, you want to be open to revisit the topic. You know, it's like, okay, you know, yeah, let's just, you know, let's don't talk right now, understand that. But mom, dad, we want you to know that we're concerned and we want to work together and do whatever we need to do to, you know, help, whatever you all need, that we're going to work at it together. But let's stop talking right now, but we'll come back.
Probably the most important thing you can do is listen, no matter however you start it. You want to be sure that you hear what your parents are saying, be open-minded to their views, because frequently the words they use may not be exactly expressing what the underlying concerns are. So you want to be sure you really listen. You know, you might assume that your mom is worried about just daily care, but what you discover by listening is she really doesn't want to be a burden. Maybe she doesn't know how to express that. Your parents, you know, this is a new stage of their life, so they may not even know how to express their fears and concerns and have never really, verbalized them to anybody. You may think, well, we need to really talk about your finances, but your parents are concerned about falling. They've maybe had some falls. And so you really, really want to listen.
And ask them questions, you know, mom and dad, what worries you the most? What of everything, what worries you? So that at least they go, okay, she's listening. Okay, I'm going to tell you what worries me. Or hopefully that they will open up, or, you know, or say, well, just kind of think about it, about what worries you the most, and then just move from there.
And you want to repeat back to them. Now, I understand that this is the most important thing to you. Is that correct? Let them know that you've heard them, that you're not coming in with your own preconceived notions of what they're worried about, that you're really hearing what they're saying. So we've kind of talked a little bit about what to do, and we'll talk about that a little more, but what not to do. That is probably the most important. So you don't want to make decisions for your parents.
Like this, this is basically what I had mentioned earlier. It's like, okay, they really cannot live here at home anymore. That's where you would not want to come in and say, mom, dad, we found a really nice assisted living place. We talked to a realtor about selling your house. You can't, that is a approach you do not want to take. Yeah. You don't want to make the decisions for your mom and dad.
You do not want to arrive at the conversation armed with paperwork. So you don't want to have, maybe power of attorneys or
assisted living brochures.
Or legal documents, and say, here, mom, here, dad, here are these papers that we want you to look over and sign. Especially your first conversations, they're just kind of an icebreaker. They're not, typically, you're not going to make a lot of decisions. You're just broaching some of these topics.
And then treating your parent like a child, I think that goes without saying. They are adults, and we all need to approach them as adults, that it is their life and their decisions.
And you may not like their choices, but unless they have, a pretty significant cognitive impairment, then they're able to make their own decisions. Right. I was going to say, this time of year, sometimes, particularly if you live, out of town from your parents, maybe you're only there during a holiday, but you do not want to have the conversation, over turkey, or during a birthday party, or during some kind of a celebration.
Just wait till after the festivities, things calm down, and then that'll make the environment, the situation, more calm. And then make promises. We have seen this so many times where the parent or parents said, you promised you would not put me in a nursing home. So if you could make sure you don't make promises because you never know what your situation is going to be like. Some pointers on that would be, if the parent says, promise me you won't put me in a nursing home. Just, you could say, mom, dad, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that you are at a place where you want to be, but know that wherever you are, you will not be abandoned. So that is a good promise right there, that they're not going to be abandoned, but you can't make a promise that they're not going to be put in a nursing home.
So what to talk about? So kind of starting off are needs and goals. So, what does your parent want out of his or her life at the current time? What are their goals? Goals of care? What are they looking forward to? What's important to them? And then what do they need? We'll talk about this a little more, daily activities, but, do they need maybe they're not driving, transportation? Do they need help with their activities of daily living? Do they just need somebody to go to the grocery store?
Do they want to take a big trip that they've never, taken? Yeah. Another goal is I want to be around my family. I want to be around close to my grandchildren. That's a goal that the parent may have.
Or they may say, I want to stay in my home.
Right.
I don't want to move. So kind of get an idea of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then daily activities, before you can plan for the future, you kind of need to know how the present is going. So how is your parent managing day to day? Can they do their own bathing and dressing, laundry,
Cooking?
Yeah, cleaning, grocery shopping? Are they able to get around the house without falling? Sometimes parents don't want to tell you that they've fallen, but have they fallen in the last 6 months, especially? Are they paying their checks? Writing checks, are they paying their bills? Keeping up with maintenance of their home if they own their home. So you may have to
do an inventory of what's going on right now at the present where you're living.
And try to, like Debbie had said before, be very gentle, because you want your parent to share things, maybe some of their fears, or maybe they can say, well, I did fall last week. Yeah. And not be scared that you're going to immediately say, well, okay, you can't live here anymore.
Right.
Then.
Yeah.
And then housing. So how do they feel about where they're living? Do they want to stay in the home? Or maybe sometimes they may say, well, we thought this house is really too big, so we probably need something a little smaller, or we'd like to move closer to you or closer to another family member.
Or wherever I move, I want to be able to take Scruffy the dog, that we see that a lot.
And then discussing options. Like I said before, sometimes people think, well, it's either stay at home or go to the rest home. Yeah. And so let them know what options are. Even if someone isn't really open to moving, maybe to a senior living facility, is take some tours. All the facilities will be welcoming to let you tour, to come and have a meal, and just to kind of see what it looks like. We've had a lot of clients that go on a tour and they say, wow, I did not know this was even available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They look and they go, oh, they've got all kinds of activities. Oh, I love bingo. Oh, they've got happy hour. That's good. So that is an option. And other options would be, of course, to downsize, and they could live independently with some assistance.
Looking at financial and legal issues. Again, going back to the current needs, potential future needs, what kind of income. Very often parents may not have shared that with their children. They, are very private, but kind of financially could they afford to hire a caregiver to come into the home, or could they afford to move to a facility? A lot of these facilities are quite expensive.
Very expensive.
Um,
You know, one thing that Billy and I see a lot, and we'd like to recommend, if your parent does not have an elder care lawyer, this would be a very good opportunity to start looking at talking with someone. They know all the paperwork and all of the new laws, etc. It's a really good support person that can really guide you and lead you in the right direction.
And then medical care, did your parent have a primary care physician? Have they named a healthcare proxy? Somebody to make decisions for them about their healthcare if they're unable to make those decisions themselves. And have they expressed their goals about their medical care? Would they want aggressive life prolonging treatment if it was necessary? We've had some people say, well, just pull the plug if I get to that point. Well, there's more to it than that. But what are their goals? And that's if you're able to go with the parent to the primary care physician, that's a good conversation to have with the physician also. And maybe they've already talked to the physician about it, but it's kind of what would they want for themselves if they're unable to make those decisions. And then everybody's probably least favorite topic is end of life care. Very important. It's kind of what we were just talking about, but really talking to your parent about their current medical state and then their wishes concerning aggressive care. Some people may say, as long as I'm alive, I want everything done. Do they understand what everything is? It's not like on TV when somebody maybe has to have CPR for 30 seconds and then they wake up and everything's fine. So, and that may be something, you want the physician to discuss. What frightens your parent about dying? Are they afraid of leaving the spouse or leaving the children or
leaving the pet
or there may be spiritual issues. Maybe, if there's a pastor, that may be good to include them. Maybe there's not, maybe they have a lot of unresolved guilt or issues in their life. So just important to kind of get those ideas. And then what quality of life is acceptable? Some people say, well, I would be fine if I was bedbound as long as I had my mind, Some people might say, if I can't do, X, Y, Z, then I wouldn't want to live. So that's important also to kind of have those discussions.
And then to clarify, a lot of individuals may think, okay, I've had a stroke, so I don't want to live like this. Well, with rehab, etc., it's not the end. So, just to kind of help them. For example, when my mother, I talked with her about her end of life, if she had coded in the hospital, and she said, well, I want them to do everything they can until they can't do anymore. So, we felt comfortable with that decision with her and having that conversation.
And if your parents, you have the conversation and they're pretty clear about what they would and wouldn't want, again, make sure their physician knows that there are different forms that the physician can initiate. We're not going to go into all of that, but there's a PULSE in Kentucky, a PULSE form, which is a physician order for life-sustaining treatment. So the physicians can.
Callie, what you doing?
Pardon? Oh, I thought somebody asked a question. So that the physician fills it out. So it is kind of like a physician order. So the person has a copy, and then if they go to the hospital, they take that, and it is an order. Maybe something about they would not want CPR, or maybe they would want CPR. So it just helps to clarify what their wishes are, and ensure that they are followed if they have had to go to the hospital. So what if the parents refuse to discuss? They say, oh, I just can't talk about this right now, or we'll just wait, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Um,
Or let's just talk about something else. I don't want to talk about this right now.
yeah.
That's their way of protecting themselves, or some denial. They're not ready to face it. And that's just how they respond and react to that question, our questions, as far as what you all need to do.
But so you need to be patient, and then try to gently discuss their fears and reasons they may not want to talk about it. They may be the type of person that never talked about any of these issues. But try to find out, what are they afraid of? They, just don't want to talk about it, or they may have some underlying fears. But again, remind them that you care and you want to be helpful, and you really want them to think about it, because by having a plan and kind of knowing what their wishes are, you're better able then to make sure their wishes are followed and before a crisis comes up. Then, bring the topic up again, say, okay, we're not going to talk about it anymore today, but these very important things, and I will be bringing them up again. So you may want to write down some things for them to think about. And you might say, okay, in another week or so, I want to talk about, kind of what your goals are. So you might want to prioritize based on your parent and their health issues, etc., and pick the most important thing that you feel like needs to be discussed, and then bring that up again in a few weeks.
And then sometimes, unfortunately, you may have to prepare a plan without your parents' input. I mean, we see this so many times. We've seen a little elderly lady with dementia. She's staying at home. I'm staying at home. I'm staying at home. The children all lived out of town. They had to finally make the decision to put her in a dementia care unit, which, that was, even though the mother all along had said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And that's totally understandable. Or if your parent is in the hospital, and we saw this a lot, that a situation occurs that, what do you want done? Do you want us to do CPR? Do you want us to put a feeding tube in? And you've never had that discussion with your parents before. And, one child saying one thing and others saying the other, when you really, you're going to have to make a decision that's very uncomfortable. And you just think, what would mom or dad want? So hopefully, if you may have had that discussion prior to, you could do that decision more comfortably, with more peace.
And you might think about, is there someone that they would be more receptive to talking to, like a physician, a friend, maybe one of the other children? If you're in a hospital and there's some decisions that need to be made, is there a palliative care team available? Because that's kind of their role, is to have these goals of care conversations and, pull in all the resources. Frequently we'll see families that have, if you're an only child, it's kind of falls to you to have all these discussions. But if there's several siblings, like Mary will be the healthcare power of attorney and kind of help with those discussions. Johnny might help with finances. Susie might help talking about moving, or housing situation. So you might be able to find out who the parent may be more willing to talk about and divvy up those conversations. So not one person has to have them all, unless you're an only child. And then unfortunately, then you may have to pull in some other resources outside the family.
To help you, yeah.
Yeah. Because having these conversations can be as distressful to the person initiating them as they are to the parents.
Oh, yeah. And it not depends on what your relationship was, you know, with your parents all along. And each parent is different. Each situation is different. Each need is different. Unfortunately, there's not a magic wand that says, if you do this, then this will happen. So these are just some things to really think about, kind of jot down, figure out what's important, how the best approach would be, but always find out from your parents, what do you need? What is it that you want? And then that will open it up.
So we'd like to get some input from you all and see if there's any questions that you have that we maybe can help with.
Oh, I'm sure there's questions people have. I do really want to emphasize what Billie and Debbie said about not treating your parents like a child.
Right.
It's not a role reversal. We're just in a new role right now. And I think just showing that respect may also get us some more results when we do sit down and have these really difficult conversations. Oops, sorry about that.
Yes.
So is anybody having any issues, difficult conversations you're going to have? I mean, the holidays are coming up. We get a chance to see our loved ones in a different environment. It's kind of more of a, I don't know, not casual celebratory environment versus the, you know, running in and out of the house with a bag of groceries type thing. No?